Hello, today's Bible study comes from Acts chapter 10, verses 1 through 8, and reads as follows. At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion in what was known as the Italian regiment. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. One day at about 3 in the afternoon, he had a vision. He distinctly saw an angel of God who came to him and said, Cornelius. Cornelius stared at him in fear. What is it, Lord? He asked. The angel answered, Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. Now send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon who is called Peter. He is staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea. When the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called him to his servants, and a devout soldier who was one of his attendants. He told them everything that had happened and sent them to Joppa. Well, let's get started. Cornelius was calling on Peter. Peter was still with Simon, and remember, Simon was a tanner. And I told you in the other Bible study, let's make sure we remember who Simon is, because he's got a place where we're going to do some things. But just in this text right now, he's calling on Peter. And Cornelius is a centurion. He is an officer in the Roman army. And this one was known as the Italian regiment. Now, just to let you know, a Jewish person would not like this guy. You know, if you were a Jew back then and he was a how would you call it? Patriotic. If you were a heavy Jew, you would not like him because you probably even hate him. But this gentleman, this centurion, Cornelius, he was a little different. If you read in verse 2, it says he and all his family, not just him, but all of his family, were devout and God fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. So he was a devout man of God who feared God, and he gave to him. He gave what he had to those who were in need. He wasn't selfish. He may have been very well to do, but he gave to the Lord. And as it says, he was devout. And the other thing is, remember, the Romans had other gods, Hercules, Zeus, Venus, all these different gods, Mars, Mercury, all that stuff. But he was enlightened. He had been converted to Judaism. And he was monotheistic because he didn't pray to those other gods. He prayed to one God. He was a God-fearer. He feared our God. He feared the only God. And don't forget, he's a Gentile, but he was a Gentile that loved the God of Israel. And they respected them. The Jews respected these people. And so he was a good guy. He was a really good guy. And guess what else? He had actions with who he was. Not just did he give, but he prayed to God always. He had a heavy relationship with the Lord. He communed with the Lord always. It says he prayed always. And he did that being a Gentile, not part of the Jewish life, but he did that as a Gentile, as a Roman officer. He was going against all that the Romans were doing because he had been enlightened. So about the ninth hour of the day, he saw clearly in a vision. The Lord was speaking to him. And, this was a customary time of prayer for the Jews, but Cornelius got this vision. 4 days ago, if you look at Acts 10 and 30, it says, 4 days ago, I was fasting until this hour, and at this ninth hour, I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing. So he was relating this incident to Peter in that verse. So you know that you can see some of the things that are going on. And he said he was praying. And what time he was praying. So he was praying, he was communicating, he was communing with the Lord. And he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God. And as you know, this was not a dream at all. This was a vision. He was praying. And he tell you, like I just said, he told you that. And the man that stood behind him, he said, was bright clothing. This is how well this vision was to him, how he saw it, how he perceived it, as we said in verse 10 and chapter 10 and 30. But Cornelius was spoken to directly, even calling him by name. But Cornelius had fear when he heard the Lord speak to him. He was afraid. And nothing wrong with being afraid. We all should be afraid. And like I said, he got a real relationship with the Lord. He's communing. So he was told what to do as he was sitting there in his vision. Cornelius stared at him in fear. It says that. What is it, Lord? Because he asked him, what is it? What do I need to do? He asked. The angel answered, your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. God sees what you're doing. Now send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon. And we all know Simon is also called Peter. And it tells him where he's staying at. Specifically, he is staying with Simon the tanner. And this Simon is a certain Simon because the tanner tells you which Simon it is. Whose house is by the sea. Not only is it Simon the tanner, but where he's located. And when the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius took action. He called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier. And they had to, one, be obedient to Cornelius, but they were in his household and under his command. Remember that, because one was a soldier and the others were household servants. So the soldier reported to him as a job, and the servants reported to him as servitude, but they had to also honor God of it, the God of Israel. So he told them to go get Peter. And this is Cornelius calling for Peter. Amen.